happy you are here. We are talking today about The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. I absolutely adored this book. If you were with us a couple weeks ago, we scored an exclusive interview with T.J. Klune while he was here in Syracuse, so I encourage you to go check out that episode before you watch this one. So let's get right into it there, Kate.
Yeah, I'm super jealous of your interview, too.
Oh, you couldn't come. I know. Kate's a very busy girl this time of year.
Yeah, a lot of school visits, so that's okay.
Yeah. So let's get into it. Your thoughts on the book and your rating.
So the way that you just said it, that you adored this book, that's a perfect way to put it. It's adorable. You know, you can't help just be like, oh, well, that was nice. You know, it definitely hits a lot of topics, both subtly and others not so subtly, which is great. You know, it's definitely geared towards young adults, but it's certainly something where if you have a middle school or high school or college, you know, it's something that a lot of families can read together, I feel like. I do have one of my good friends, like, she read it and her 12-year-old daughter also read it, and they both loved it so much. So it's definitely one of those books that checks off a lot of boxes for a lot of people, especially for a lot of young readers looking for kind of that fantasy-esque, if they're a fan of Harry Potter, maybe Hunger Games or anything like that. This is definitely a nice new little modern twist of everything. I saw online someone referring it to similar to the school for peculiar children.
Oh, yeah.
Starts with a P. I'm drawing a blank on it. I'm sure people are like, this, screaming at the TV right now. But
I can Lemony Snicket.
Yeah,
Lemony Snicket, maybe?
I think so. Anywho, I give this a 4-star, maybe like a 4 1/4 star.
Okay,
I enjoyed it. At first, I was just kind of like, oh, okay, here we go, trying to remember all these characters, and it was like very, you know, reminding me of Harry Potter with the Minister of Magic.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, that's not what it's called in this book. I'm just kind of like, okay, is this a Harry Potter ripoff? No, it's like, no, it is not. It is certainly is standalone. Its characters are very original. It like pulls from maybe other genres and other books and movies and all that stuff, but it's definitely a very unique take on everything. It definitely hits on a lot of issues that arise in our current day and anything LGBTQ related plus and all that. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I was going to say I loved this book. For me, I gave it 5 stars, which I'm a tough grader. If you are a listener of our Chapter 9 book club, I loved everything about this book. Kind of like you said, I think he does a really good job at subtly and not so subtly hinting at today's political climate and what certain communities are going through, but he doesn't like hit you over the head with it. And I think he does it just really like tastefully. And I just adore this book. I read a review somewhere that said, I'll read it. It said, this book is very close to perfect. Oh, that wasn't the one. It was, although I agree, it was really good. It was something to the effect of, it's like being hugged in a big gay blanket.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's so cozy. I like that. So before we get any further, let me read you the synopsis, which I probably should have done at the beginning, but I forgot to. So, Linus Baker is a by-the-book caseworker in the department in charge of magical youth. He is tasked with determining whether 6 dangerous magical children are likely to bring about the end of the world. Arthur Parnassus is the master of the orphanage. He would do anything to keep his children safe, even if it means the world will burn, and his secrets will come to light. The House in the Cerulean Sea is an enchanting love story, masterfully told about the profound experience of discovering an unlikely family in an unexpected place, and realizing that family is yours. I love that. I think that really does a good job of setting it up for folks. And I think in the last episode, we also kind of talked about each character and a little bit about them. So I won't get too much into that. But I did print out some different book club questions that I figured we can kind of dive into. And I'll start, too, because you had mentioned that it reminded you of Harry Potter with the Ministry of Magic. So here it's Dykemy, which is the department in charge of magical youth. I also thought that was very clever, too. And he did it was just funny, like how the rules and regulations book is rules and regulations, and like
it's pretty straightforward. It's just kind of like, okay, it is what it is.
And then the people in charge, it's upper management and extremely upper management. I thought that was really funny. I liked how he did that. So here's one: Linus Baker, constantly being monitored, yet he still manages to produce quality work. Why does he push through working under such pressure? And if you were in his shoes, would you be able to work under these conditions?
Well, in our business, we go through a lot of tough situations.
It's true.
Whether, with you and news and me and weather. And I think he just doesn't know any other way. That's just, he is groomed to like this is what you do. There is no alternative. You keep pushing through, even if you are getting pushed back to you, that means you got to get the job done, because the job needs to get done, and you got to do what you got to do to get the job done. And
I think he genuinely cares about the kids that he is going out and checking in on. But I think, kind of like you said, I don't think he knows. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And I think he thinks he is doing the best he can, and it's not until he meets Arthur and all these kids that it's like, whoa, like I've been brainwashed this whole time.
Yeah, exactly. And just like you said, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. That's the vibe I got. The book is thoroughly endearing, which we've said, like being wrapped in a big gay blanket. Part of it's because of the children. They each have their unique and incredible powers. First, I think we talked about this in the last one too. Our favorite characters. I think we both said Chauncey, right?
Chauncey.
How can you not? How can you not? He's just like perfect. And then I think Talia is another really
the
good
little
one.
gnome.
The little gnome. And Sal. Honestly, all of them. They all have something really special that I like. This was an interesting question though. Whose magical abilities appeal to you the most?
Ooh.
I know, it's a hard one.
Considering I'm horrible at gardening, Talia, with how into her tools and getting her garden perfect and all that, I would love to have her ability, because I am terrible at that stuff.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. I think for me, I saw this question before, so I thought a little bit, but if I could learn how to rein it in, I think Arthur's, like being fired, like the phoenix.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm an Aries, so like we're very fiery, so I feel like it works. But like we saw in the book, like you have to really be able to learn your powers and be able to rein it in. But I think maybe Arthur.
Which is the whole purpose of the book, too, with Lucy.
Right, right.
Because they're trying to prevent him from being
ending
the
world.
worst that he could be, and trying to make him the best that he can be. And that's not, it's proven to not be easy. I'm curious how any of the sequel kind of touches on
So
that.
I started the sequel. I haven't finished it yet. It's very interesting. And I think, doesn't this one end, because I read this a couple months ago now, doesn't it? It ends with like that they might be getting another kid, right? Like the woman is like the woman from the town is like, I know someone that you could help. So the second one starts with that, and it's a Yeti, and a Yeti like kind of joins the family. Again, that's not any spoilers. I haven't even finished it, but it kind of picks up there, and then also they're like appealing to the I almost want to say the Ministry of Magic. They're appealing to like Dicamy about certain topics and things like that. So I'm excited to get into that one. Linus and Lucy bond over their love of music and artists like the Everly Brothers, Sam Cooke, Little Richard, Big Bopper, and Buddy Holly. What role do you think music plays in the characters' lives?
Ooh, that's a good one. I loved how Lucy had all the records. And all that was really cool. Yeah, their bond over the music. It was just interesting that it was a lot of the oldies, our version of oldies. Our kids have different, they probably think our NSYNC music are oldies to them. But old. But it's just kind of like those classic sounds that maybe a lot of us grew up listening to. I don't know. It kind of reflects back at a simpler time, and then maybe that's kind of what Lucy is reaching for a little bit, because he's trying to make himself not so complicated, maybe. Oh.
Yeah, and I think also a form of escape, right? Like I feel like even for me too, like there's music that depending on my mood, I have a music for that. If you're like depressed, there's like music you want to listen to. As we know from when we were younger, if you're going through a breakup, there's like music you want to listen to.
Fearless Taylor Swift album.
Yes, there you go. And I feel like these songs, kind of like you said, they are like more oldies. It's more simpler time. So maybe it is some kind of an escape. And then I think for them, that helps them form their relationship, because Linus is this guy from Dicamy, and they're kind of like, is he going to shut us down or whatever? And that's kind of like his
and building
way.
that trust.
Building that trust with Lucy, I think so. Each of these characters in the books, they have different fears to work through and conquer. Arthur fears for the safety and well-being of the children. Linus fears stepping out of his comfort zone. The villagers fear the magical powers the children possess. Do you think characters face their fears in beneficial ways? And could you relate to any of the characters' way of coping?
I got to think about that one. I'll let you take it first.
Yeah. So I think with the villagers and fearing the magical powers that the children possess, that fear kind of manifests into hate. And I think he's doing a very not so subtle job of showing like some things that are happening in present day and how like prejudice happens and where it stems from. And you can go from like what, you know, we're seeing in present day with like ICE and immigration, or even as far back as like the Holocaust, you know, when a fear turns into a hate. So I think that is definitely in there.
It's interesting. My family and I, not to interrupt real quick, we watched Zootopia 2 yesterday, and there's like subtle hints of kind of that in there too, where my husband and I were Googling, we were like, there's definitely some parallels going on with some of that stuff too. So a little bit of a tangent, but we noticed some of that showing up in Zootopia as well.
Yeah, but yeah, so I think, I don't even remember, what was the question? Do you think the characters face their fears in beneficial ways? So I think for Arthur and Linus, they do, because Linus goes out of his comfort zone, and then he finds this family that he never really had. And then I think Arthur, at first maybe not, but then by the end, yes, I think he's able to
kind of going back down to that room,
yes,
you know, where he was, and
like
facing
the
that
cellar thing, yeah, we kind of touched on a lot of this. Oh, I like this one. T.J. Klune believes that it's important now more than ever to have accurate, positive, queer representation in stories. Why is this representation important now more than ever? And what did you think about the queer representation in the book? I liked it. I think this is what he's known for. So I haven't read all his books, but I think LGBTQ plus relationships are a big theme in all of his books, and I think that's awesome. Like, why not?
Oh, absolutely. And at first,
and if you don't like it, don't read it.
No, and it kind of like eases you into it, if that will. Like, you have like subtle suspicions, and then they're like, okay, no, he is gay. There is that that relationship, that attraction there. You know, then you're kind of like, oh, okay, cool. No, I think especially for young adults and for teenagers reading this, they need something more than just the prince and the princess, you know, and like, you know, your typical hero and heroine, that, you know, to see alternative outcomes. Yeah. It's important.
And, you know, TJ said it in the interview too, like, if there's someone out there that feels like they're alone, you know, nobody understands them, there's no one like them in school, like, this is a book for you. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like anyone can identify, and I think that's really nice.
Yeah, with any of the characters too, and absolutely.
Yeah. I thought the slogans in the book were really interesting. Like, there's a lot of slogans that stick with you. So, like, from Dykemy, see something, say something. A quiet child is a healthy child. We are happiest when we listen to those in charge. And then what was the other one? Wish you were here. And I thought those were all just really powerful. So I was going to ask you, like, does that remind you of anything in the real world? And like, how do slogans play such a big part? And for me, I feel like it's just even the fact that I can remember all those things from the book, and I read it like a few months ago. Like, they kind of like stick with you.
Yeah. Oh, a quiet child is a healthy child. I like that one. A mom with 3 very loud children. Sometimes a little too loud. I draw back to my own personal life, where when I go to school visits, and that's what I teach the kids, is to remember, you know, when thunder roars, go indoors. That's the biggest one. My 3-year-old even knows that one. So that, you know, especially in thunderstorm safety, because I teach the kids, you know, what's more dangerous, the thunder or the lightning? And then they say lightning. So I'm like, so then why, when you hear thunder, when do you go inside? Because there's lightning nearby. Because, you know,
right. Yeah.
And so it's just drawing those parallels to kind of hone in your message. And so that's clearly what Dykemy was doing, trying to keep things short and tangible and memorable too. Yeah. To control what they want to control.
I know. Yeah, some really interesting stuff here. But yeah, for me, like, I wrote on my Goodreads, because I love Goodreads, by the way. I don't know if we've talked about Goodreads. But, like, if you don't have that app, download it because it's so helpful, especially if you're a big reader. And this is not an ad, believe me. We don't get any money here. But, like, if you read a lot of books, it's just such a good way to, like, document it all. Because there's so many times, like, me and Kate are talking, and you're like, did I read that? Let me check. Or I'm like, I think that sounds so familiar, like, or like an Abby Jimenez or like an Emily Henry book. A lot of times they kind of like blend together.
Okay, yeah, where you can't exactly remember. Yeah.
Yeah. So I gave this one 5 stars, and I said whimsical and magical on the surface, but underneath it's such a powerful story about identity, acceptance, being yourself, and truly seeing people for who they are. And then even though there were parts that are like sad or like, you're like, it kind of feels timely right now, that's kind of depressing, I still feel the overall message is very hopeful. And it left me feeling happy and cozy and wanting to read the next one.
Because you feel happy for Linus, that he's kind of finding himself, breaking free of what he thought the box he was supposed to be put in, and realizing that, no, there is more out there. There is more to the world. Maybe not everything is what it seems, and maybe the people at the top don't know what's best for you and what with your best interests at heart. And so kind of seeing him break through all that and finding his people, finding his home, finding his family.
And I think it just shows that, like, home is what you make it. Home is not a place. Home is not an address. Home is the people that are there. I like that found family type of theme. So I think that about wraps us up for this. Do you have anything else you want to touch on?
No, I think we covered a good chunk. Yeah.
Perfect. So we're going to go to break, but when we come back, really excited, we're going to have Sarah Tucker here. She is from the Friends of the Central Library, FOCL as it's called, and we're going to talk all about the author series. They just wrapped up season 31, so we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to talk about a sneak peek of season 32, which will launch in the fall, and there are some really big names. So we'll have much more when we come back with Sarah. Welcome back. I am so happy to be joined by Sarah Tucker with the Friends of Central Library to be talking about the author series, which just wrapped up. So first, let's get into that. How do you think this season all went for you?
I think it was phenomenal. I don't think I can fully express just how amazing this season was, and the energy we got from each and every single author was so amazing.
Yeah, so let's talk about it a little bit. We had this year, I'll just read off, Robert Dugoni, who I also had the pleasure of interviewing, such a sweet guy, Percival Everett, we had Jodie Cantor, TJ Clune, Natasha Alford, and Liz Moore. So let's talk about some of the highlights. I know they were all so special, but what were some of the highlights for you?
There's a couple I can choose. First one I'll say is from Percival Everett. It wasn't one I experienced myself, but an audience member brought her young son to Percival Everett, and this is such a typical 12-year-old boy thing, I feel like. So she told me the story of asking her son, what'd you think? How'd the evening go? And he goes, oh, it was boring, which sounds awful, right? But then he said, but what if I wanted to be a writer? What if I wanted to be an author? What could I do? Could I do it? Could I be who I am? And that's one of those things that I feel like really encompasses what our series can do, is really inspire that next generation. And that hearing that story, I talk about it all the time.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's really sweet. And I will say, I went to Jodie Cantor's when I got the pleasure of introducing her. Thank you for that, by the way.
Thank you. It was one of the best.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, and it was so cool just to see the mix of people you get, the mix of authors. There's such diversity. This series is bringing nationally known writers to Syracuse, which I think is just really cool for us, but also for the community.
It is, and for her too. I think personally, as a female, it was so great seeing somebody so powerful and smart and amazing on stage, and somebody who talked about something that I feel like we all really, unfortunately, personally connect to with the Harvey Weinstein scandals and stuff. I remember when that came out, just feeling so heard in some ways. So she was amazing.
Yeah.
And I think you're also highlighting, though, how much our series has something for everyone. And we try really hard to make sure there is something for everyone on that stage through the diversity lens, the topic lens, anything. We try to make sure there's something.
Well, that's what I was going to say next. Talk about, too, how you touch on so many different genres. There's documentaries, fiction, nonfiction. Touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, so if we're talking about this season alone, Robert Dugoni, I hate to put him in a bubble because he writes so many things, but he's really into the mystery. And that's something, you know, I hate to, you know, profile, but all the guys were like, this is great.
Yeah, right.
So he writes his mystery books. He's written so many from female's perspective, men's perspective. And then from after Robert Dugoni, we had Percival Everett, which he has a large base, but his really sitting in the racial world, something for people to really learn and dig into. And he just won his Pulitzer Prize. So we're really looking at the literary level. And then Liz Moore with just her thrillers and the really psychological bits. And then we took our break, you know, Syracuse winters. Nobody really wants to go out.
Fair.
Right? So then in March, we had Natasha Alford, who's a hometown legend. And she's a journalist, but she only has the one book. But we found out she has another one coming out, for a children's book. Hopefully we can bring her back for that.
Yeah.
But she wrote a memoir about Syracuse. It was like a love letter to Syracuse, but also her growing up. Jodi Kantor with her journalism and her books about what she's written, as well as going forward, and then ending the season with TJ Klune. I think mass appeal around fantasy, but also his LGBTQ plus characters really speaking to that group and just about empowerment and love and things like that. I think it's amazing.
So true. And I can say I had never read TJ Klune, and The House on the Cerulean Sea was my first, and I think they call it magical realism, which I think is such a great way to describe it. And it really stuck with me. Like, this book, I feel like, and even though we wrote it a few years ago, I feel like it's so poignant for what's happening in the political climate. And it just touches on some really tough topics, but in a different kind of way, and still leaves you hopeful at the end. This probably, for me, was like one of my favorite books of the year. And I don't think I would have even found it or tried it if it wasn't for FOCL bringing him here.
Well, and I have a confession. So I started this job in July. I'm new. Yeah. I'd actually not read any single of one of the authors from this season before this job. Yeah. I mean, I had two reads, but this job gave me a chance to read them. And the same. I mean, I learned something from each author, especially, but TJ Klune, especially just having him. I got the same thing. As the books dealt with such difficult topics, but I didn't end. I read The Bones Beneath My Skin was for our book club.
Yeah.
And then I'm working on House of the Cerulean Sea. They're hard, but I don't feel drained at the end.
No, they're not sad.
Yes.
They have like a hopeful tone.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're really beautiful. So talking about that, I was going to ask, how do you all choose who you bring? Like, how do you find the right fit for the author series?
Well, we try to do it kind of through community. It's really cool. We have what we call an author selection committee. So we have people from the community, from our board, who come together, and through this process, we all bring names to the table saying, here's, you know, my top 10 from what I've read. And then over the course of about 3 meetings, we start kind of really narrowing it down and picking out with what we think would work for the series, while keeping in mind we want diversity. We don't want, you know, all fantasy authors or all mystery authors. So we try to make sure we pick and choose based on diversity. But I can't read everyone all year round. Nobody reads everything, so it's nice getting multiple perspectives.
Totally. And how important is variety when you're building that lineup?
I think it's one of the most important things, especially if we're asking the community to come out and support. I don't love reading memoirs, I'll be honest. I read them, but it's not something I'd say if I saw a series of all memoirs, I wouldn't want to come out. But it's also then a perspective I think we're missing by not having those. I think, you know, somebody like Percival Everett, who writes mostly fantasy, or TJ Klune, they have such different life experiences about what they're writing or reading that we'd miss that by just doing one type of author.
Totally. And like you had mentioned that this got you into reading different genres. James had popped up in my, you know, list of books I could read or might be interested in, but him coming made me read it.
Exactly.
And that too was such a powerful book and such a different look, like a different look. If those who haven't read it, it's like a different take on Huck Finn. And it's just so well done. And I listened to that one via audio, and I would say that's a good one for audiobook too.
Me too. I listened to that one audio and Bones Beneath My Skin.
Oh, yeah.
And there's something, the right narrator, I know there's this big debate of reading versus audio, but the right narrator just brought it to life for me in a way my own brain could not have done.
Totally. And TJ Klune, I think he uses the same narrator, so it probably was the same one that I listened to for House in the Cerulean Sea, and it's so good. Like, that's how I imagine Linus's voice, was that voice.
Did you catch yourself just sitting in the car a couple extra minutes to
Yes.
finish? Okay, good.
Yes. Or like I have to go to bed, but like I can't go to bed yet. I need to
Yep.
I need to listen more. It's so funny. So I'm curious, have authors commented at all on the Syracuse audience or like the Syracuse atmosphere after they've left or while they're here? Like, what did they say about Syracuse?
They love it, actually. So so we don't get a lot of talking. I don't know if you know, but like it's a very tight day.
Yeah.
And by the end of the day, they're exhausted. So I don't get more than like a sentence here or there. But they're also thankful we've brought them to Syracuse, and they love our audience. I don't, especially Jody Cantor and TJ Klune. I mean, they got standing ovations, right? People are standing in the audience. And a lot of these authors, they're used to, I think, a lot more of the intimate sitting in a bookstore or something like that. They don't get always this large audience who's just there for them.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. And again, I was at Jody's, and I was lucky because I was backstage with her mom when we were getting ready, and it was so sweet just to like how proud she was of her, and just it was just really special. Like, I've not been to something like that. So I just think it's so great for Syracuse to be getting this kind of recognition and like this type of caliber talent. Coming here.
Or for me, it's the connections they have to Syracuse is wild to me. The amount of authors I've met, and they're like, oh, I've been here before. Or Jody Cantor, her just family who attended SU.
Yeah.
And I think we get so caught up in Syracuse being such a tiny town with nothing to do, then seeing them go, this is great, or you have this, or I've been here before, I've done this, is so amazing to hear.
Yeah, no, it is. I feel like it's like we're the small city, you know what I mean? So it's like we have what the big cities have, but we actually just do it on a smaller scale, which I kind of love, actually.
That's my big tagline for our series. You'd have to go to New York City, or I think the most, like, Buffalo, or you're going to Denver to get some similar quality authors.
Yeah, no, it's true.
But we have it right in Syracuse.
I know, like, we're so lucky. So I know we've talked about this in the past, but for those who maybe weren't with us then, talk about like how long FOCL's been doing this, and just kind of like the growth and what you've seen since launching the author series and getting the kind of caliber of authors that we're getting now.
Absolutely. So we just closed up our 31st season, if you can believe it.
Yes.
And we're already in the start for our 32nd. So I think if you look at our history, the names and the caliber of authors we get are crazy, I'll say. I mean, again, focusing on this season, Percival Everett just won the Pulitzer Prize, and he came to Syracuse. Where else can you see that or get a ticket to him and just attend?
Yeah.
I think my biggest thing is over the year, I will say COVID was hard, right? I think everybody noticed in the live theater world there was a drop, and we're still working on building that up. But the passion for people who've been we have people who have been coming to FOCL from the very first season, our loyal subscribers, and they have come every single year for 31 years.
Yeah.
And people are passionate. And they're also passionate just about our mission about it's not just an author series, which I hate to say just author series, but we also support the library with this.
Yeah.
And that mission and that passion, I think we're just seeing it starting to grow back. And that, I hate to say passion, but again, but it's so important to say.
No, I understand. Do you feel this series has helped strengthen Syracuse's literary and even cultural community?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, part of what I want to say is where else do you see something like this happening in Syracuse or in the surrounding areas? And, on the bragging point, when employers are trying to bring people in, or if the city's trying to bring new employers in, FOCL is one of the things they talk about, our author series. It's a bragging point, and we should be and I'm proud to be able to say we have this in Syracuse.
Yeah. And I know it's 31 seasons, so obviously you guys have been doing this a while, but seeing where it started to what it's become, and I know you, like you said, you're somewhat new to the role, but like, what makes you most proud of FOCL and where it's come?
Oh gosh,
it's a tough one.
Proud. I know. So I'm gonna take it back to when I was a kid a little and be. So I actually grew up going to FOCL.
Oh.
I was a little 12-year-old sitting in the audience because my mom thought this was such an important part of my education growing up and getting to see these authors. And I think that, and I wouldn't be where I am today without getting to see authors like this and getting to attend FOCL events and getting to meet them. I still have the books from then that, through moving and things, I've kept them. And just how inspiring that was for me. And then getting to see and hear other students talk about this. There was, when Natasha Alfred came, there was a student who kind of got to really meet her. And that student said she never felt so seen or heard because she also had a grandfather who spoke Spanish that she couldn't, and she didn't speak Spanish. And she had and she had family, she was Black. She was also mixed race. And she was just saying how much Natasha's words really helped her and inspired her and she connected to. And I really think it's that legacy of youth growing up with these sort of things. I think that's what I am.
It's really powerful. For people who have never been to an author series, what are they missing out on?
Everything. No. Well, I think people get misconceptions sometimes. Our authors aren't coming in. You don't have to have ever read their book. They're not coming in, right? They're not coming in reading from their book or saying, you saw this page, or I think that's terrifying sometimes. Like I would, get nervous going to an event going, oh, I don't know this. I'm going to look like a fool.
Right.
But these authors are coming and speaking about their personal experiences, their lives. And you have something to learn from every single one of them. And they're humanized. These are no longer this random person who wrote this book.
Yeah.
You get to meet and know these authors and connect with them in a way that, again, inspires, or you see them and you get their perspective. And even if it's somebody you've read before, you get to really understand them more and why they wrote what they wrote some more.
And it is humanizing because, in this era where everything is on social media, you can follow them and maybe watch a few of their streams or stories or reels, but it's just so different seeing them in person and being in that venue. It's very intimate and just there's nothing quite like it.
Yeah, well, and I'm glad you pointed that out because that's the other thing is why would we go and see this when I can see an interview online? But it's because it's not an interview. The authors are given a prompt to talk about their life and their works, and they come up with everything else. So it's not not a Q&A for the whole time. Some authors prefer the conversation, but again, we keep it very loose. And then there's a Q&A portion where the audience, the people there, get to actually ask the questions. And then you get to hear your question asked. You get a little shout out on stage. And then the author's answering that. So that's the other thing is you're missing that personal experience.
And that part is really well done. Sarah, you're the one that is up there. And she'll read the questions and they'll come in and she'll say, oh, Deborah just said blah, blah, blah. And it is, it's just a really nice moment. I do really encourage anyone who hasn't attended to at least give it a shot. Whether you're, a reader or not, I think you can still get something out of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's the topics, right? Because you don't have to, they talk about their life or their experiences, so anybody can hear it.
And how they got there.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about season 32.
I know. I got to be part of creating this lineup. I'm so excited.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask you. Like, we'll get into the amazing authors in a second, but wow, the planning that goes into this. So you do this. Like, when do you start planning for the season?
We started in September.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, so we really had this way far in advance, and we finish up. So we have to sign contracts, do all this other stuff. So by about January, we had next season locked down, which I have to say, keeping those secrets was really hard for me. I'm a very talkative and open person.
I bet. And again, talk about big names. I have to say, I do like my rom-coms. So Abby Jimenez, wow.
Right.
Like, how did you do that?
We're lucky, and we have an amazing agent we work with. He helps us bridge the gap with them. But also, I think it's part of that, our mission statement that we raise money for the libraries. Authors hear that, and you'll see at every author series, we end with a question asking an author, what do libraries mean to you? And we really mean that because people, they appreciate that, and that's why a lot of them do come.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And that, again, I feel like I've said it a few times, but that is a very powerful moment when they do answer, that question. And they all do take that seriously. Let's talk a little bit about these authors coming up. So I brought the lineup, and we can kind of talk about whatever ones you want to just give a little preview. So we have, and I might mispronounce some of the names, But we have Abby Jimenez, of course. That's really exciting for those who like the popular romance and such. We have Gary, how do you say his name?
Steingart.
We have Gary Steingart. He's known for humor and satirical takedown of contemporary society. We have Kevin Young, poetry editor for The New Yorker, an award winner of 16 books of poetry and prose. We have Megha Majumdar. And she's quoted as one of the most exciting voices of her generation. Her novel, A Guardian and a Thief, is Oprah's book club pick and finalist for the National Book Award. So again, like, I'm not even done yet, and they're all different genres.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's at Michael Chabon. I should have really had you just, maybe I should just have you read these before I just jump right in. But I actually read one of his books when I was in college. So it was in like I'm trying to remember what the class was. I think it was kind of a historical class. And I remember loving that book. So I'll have to catch up on some of his most recent works. And I know here he won the Pulitzer for The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. Check that one. And then, is that everyone? Who else do we have?
We end the season with the amazing R.F. Kuang.
Yes. Oh, I missed that one. That was at the very end. Yeah. And she's been popping up in my feed too. What is she known for? What is her book called?
So there's a couple. So she's really known for her book Yellowface.
Yes, I haven't read that yet.
And also her trilogy, The Poppy Wars. So she's another one who does a lot of YA fantasy. Yeah.
So talk about what you're most excited for and just kind of some of the behind-the-scenes process. I know you're so excited for all of it.
I was going to say, so all of them? That's no. So it's interesting because part of it is I am genuinely excited for all of them. This is the first season, though, I'll admit I know a couple because I'll say Abby is one of the ones I'm excited for. Part of that is back in November, I broke my elbow and I was kind of homebound for about 6 weeks. I read every single one of her books. Like, it was the end of November. I knew we were starting to look into her. Somebody told me to read her, and I read every single one of them and immediately just said, great. We need her. And I think like a week later, I got confirmation she was coming, and I just started flipping out and fangirling at home. R.F. Kuang is actually somebody I read when I was younger, so I love that. I'm very much a fantasy person. And then actually Kevin Young. So Kevin Young, I feel like he was the director of African American culture and history at the Smithsonian for a couple years. I'll admit I'm not much of a poetry person, but I've read some of them and they're fantastic. He's gotten talk about somebody we like to keep, multiple genres. Mm-hmm. He's written nonfiction books. He's the poetry editor. He has a children's book out. He's one of the ones that, like, with how prolific he is and what he's done, I don't know how anybody has time in their life to do what he's done.
Yeah, you're like, how?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, it's just incredible. And I think, again, it's such a testament to the work you all are doing, getting these types of authors and all the different genres. Whatever you're into, you can find an author that checks that box. Any final thoughts before I let you go?
I just encourage everyone. So right now is season subscriptions, and I know it's hard to say I'm going to lock down for a whole season, but I encourage people to do that because if you can, you get a chance to see all these authors and you're encouraged to it because it might be the author you have no idea who they are that you end up the most inspired by and loving. Mm-hmm. After Robert Dugoni came, I can't tell you the number of people who are like, I had no idea who he was, and now he's my favorite author. I've read every single one of his books. Mm-hmm. So you never know what you will learn. So I just encourage you to come to all of them, especially almost if you don't know who they are.
I love that. I think we'll end it right there. Sarah Tucker, Friends of the Central Libraries, thank you so much for being with us today. And for all of you, thank you so much for reading Beyond the Prompter with us. Have a good one.
Download the WSYR Plus app on your TV to stream News Channel 9 for free. Just go to your smart TV, search WSYR Plus in the App Store, and download to start streaming today.